Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron, accompanied by John Harris. Aaron Chow, I am. We're back making the rest of our Week 12 against the spread picks. Made our Thanksgiving ones earlier. It's already going to be up on YouTube before Thanksgiving because, there'd be no point of not having it up before Thanksgiving. So I made those picks, those 3 games, and actually didn't even realize, though, I guess I'm not sure if it's always been a thing, but all teams play this week. So no buys for anybody, unfortunately, but it does make the process a little bit easier. So we'll be going over every team. So, if you're an NFL fan, we'll be talking about your team at some point if we haven't already for Thanksgiving games. But to preface going into this week, and once again, this is before the account of the Thanksgiving games because that may alter the standings a little bit. But in regards to last week, going into the week, I was 2 games ahead of John. John had cut my lead previously, but we only had 4 differences. And of course, in classic podcast fashion, we split the differences. John had the early first 2 games. The Jets couldn't keep within the spread. That punt return really screwed me. And then the Giants, the Lions came through for John. And then I got Indy and New Orleans. So, and then none of our locks hit. Unfortunately, the Bears couldn't hang on for John. And for me, Casey couldn't cover. So we'll be going into like I said, the rest of the Week 12 games, starting with the Sunday games. Once again, as per usual, if you can check out our YouTube, if you want, once again, see our Thursday picks, Thanksgiving picks, and such, that is at Shut Up and Ball, or not at, but Shut Up and Ball on YouTube. We're on the road to 1,000 subs there, so please like, comment, subscribe. Same for our podcast mediums. We're Shut Up and Ball on those. And then, we have social stuff, but I'll plug that at the end. Nonetheless, let's get into it, John. Fortunately, not really starting off with a great one, but hey, we got to, go through the list. First one on the docket here is Miami, at Miami, favored by 9.5, hosting the Houston Texans. In regards to background of this game, it's funny because, this is the 2 infamous teams where you could say the Houston Texans trade for Tunsil and the Kenny Stills, given all those picks, kind of has helped Miami become what they are now, and help Houston become what Houston's become. So, John, basically, I guess the main question should be, do you think Miami covers, or do you think Houston can keep it close?
I don't believe in Houston. They're benching Davis Mills, so Kyle Allen, first start of the year. Their run defense is poor, and we've seen over the last couple of weeks since the addition of Jeff Wilson, their run game is really starting to get going. And, you got a rookie corner out there in Derek Stingley. The whole secondary is not that strong. I mean, Houston's just not a very good team, and Miami is. And that's kind of as simple as it is. Also, with guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I feel a little more comfortable with the bigger spread because just a simple little slant could go to the house. Like this kind of team has that explosive playability, and that kind of a thing is something that you could see the doors just get blown wide open at some point during this game, and then Houston's trailing, and then they start making mistakes because they're trying to catch up. So yeah, I'm going with Miami to cover, despite how big of a spread it is, and despite usually I don't take the big favorites. I'm doing it this week, going with the Dolphins.
Yeah, I'm going with the Dolphins also. Regardless if it's Kyle Allen or Davis Mills, if Davis Mills somehow gets thrown in there, Houston offense, just to add on what John mentioned, defense not very, still finding its way, not still lacking talent there. Same with the offense. I mean, like we mentioned before, really just Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver that you're really scared of. And then once you start getting ahead, Dameon Pierce doesn't become a factor because, the run game they can't really run the ball if they're behind. So, I think Miami is going to cause some havoc on defense. They're not going to have to worry about, too many big plays being let up since Houston doesn't really have that many big plays anyway. So, I think this would be a pretty straightforward win for the Miami Dolphins, and they keep that train moving along with Tua and Mike McDaniels. So we'll move on from that one. Going to the Baltimore Ravens. They are favored by 3.5, going to Jacksonville to play the Jags. How do you see this one playing out between these two, John?
Well, Jacksonville, they're coming into this game, and they're at home. I believe they're coming off their bye week, and so I don't know. I kind of feel like they might come out a little strong here for the Ravens. They're still dealing with injuries. Mark Andrews should play in this one, but still kind of banged up. No Rashad Bateman. I don't think J.K. Dobbins is back yet. Like, really, to me, the Ravens, although they've been winning, their games haven't necessarily been blowouts. And for the Jags, like if you take, point differential and EPA and all these kind of advanced statistics, the Jags are like the most unlucky team in the NFL. Just random fun fact: the Vikings they're 8-2 and they have a negative point differential. Meanwhile, the Jaguars, with a positive differential, are 3-7. So anyway, it just goes to show you that the Jags are pretty unlucky, and I think that this is the week that maybe they can get right. I think that maybe in this game, off the bye week, extra preparation, they can come out and they can, at least keep it close. So I'm taking the Jaguars to cover. Even if, they lose, I think they lose by field goal. But honestly, I just have a gut feeling they're going to win this one. So I'm taking the Jaguars.
I'm in agreement with you, taking the Jags here. I think we saw last week, a little bit of the formula of how you can slow down this Baltimore offense and Lamar Jackson, with Carolina built on speed and have solid corners that they can kind of leave on islands because they weren't afraid of any receivers. I know Demarcus Robinson had a good game, but can you really count on that again? Unsure about that. So, yeah, I think Jacksonville is definitely going to give Baltimore a run for their money on that side of the ball. Big question is for Jacksonville, obviously, is the flip side. Can the offense, can Trevor Lawrence and the gang make enough plays? He's had good numbers, but, there have been crucial moments where, he's missed throws or, maybe, doesn't make the best decisions. Remember early in the year, had some issues in the red zone with some bad turnovers. And definitely can't do that against Baltimore, much less any team. So, but it is at Jacksonville too, and I don't have numbers up in front of me, but just from recent memory, it just feels like every team that goes into Jacksonville, a little bit of I won't say a trap game, but it's just they don't really perform up to their standards usually too. Is this maybe the city of Jacksonville? No offense to anyone that lives there, but just weird stuff happens there. So I think Jacksonville will keep it close, win or lose. So yeah, and Baltimore, like I said, still think Lamar's talented. Still think he's amazing. I don't think this is all his fault. Just, like I said, who does he really have to throw to that you can depend on outside of Mark Andrews, who, like you mentioned, is banged up. So, and their run game really has been ineffective. Gus Edwards, has been okay, but, he's still obviously probably dealing with some injury. And like you said, missing J.K. Dobbins too. So we'll see if Baltimore can figure out how to get the win there in Jacksonville. John and I both believe in Jacksonville to at least cover, maybe even win. So there's that. Now we go to the Big Apple, to the New York Jets. They are at home starting Mike White. Zach Wilson will not be starting this game, according to Robert Saleh. So those Jets still favored by 3.5, hosting the Chicago Bears. I saw Justin Fields, his injury status still up in the air, I believe, right? And I saw more news on it, but it didn't clarify. Okay, so he may be out, or if he does play this game, nope, he has that shoulder injury. John, do you believe in Justin Fields and the Bears to get it done? Because the coin says that the Jets lose this one. So how do you feel?
I trust the almighty coin, all right? I'm going with the Chicago Bears here. I also just think that Mike White, we haven't seen him in a while. The last time we did see him, as I mentioned on our last episode, reacting to the potential Zach Wilson benching, Mike White threw 4 interceptions in his last start. So I don't know. This Bears defense, they're not amazing, but they do have some opportunistic players like Eddie Jackson, who's one of the top players in the league in terms of interceptions this season. Jaquan Brisker has been making plays, the rookie safety. So I don't know. I just feel like this Bears defense against Mike White in his first start, maybe they can force a couple interceptions. Also with the Jets, I still don't really have that much faith in their run game. I know that the Bears aren't the most stout of front sevens, especially since, the last couple of years they've lost a lot of key guys trading Roquan Smith and losing Khalil Mack, all these different playmakers. But the Jets run game just hasn't been that good. I don't think people are really talking, we talk about some of these other offensive lines like the Bears and how bad theirs is, but I don't think that people realize, at least according to PFF, the Jets have the 30th ranked offensive line. It's not been pretty this year. And as we've mentioned before, there's a lot of injuries. Elijah Vera Tucker, which I think he might be back this week. I don't know. I saw somewhere that he might be returning soon, but still missing Mekhi Becton and other people. And, Dwayne Brown has been in and out with injuries. There's just been a lot of movement along that offensive line. And so now you add in a quarterback change. I'm taking the Bears, even if the backup, who I believe is Trevor Siemian, plays. I'm rocking with the Bears. I don't know. I don't have faith in the Jets offense to really get much going. And for the Bears, they've been cooking. They've been getting a lot of points, and I'm expecting Justin Fields personally to play.
All right, so not saying anything regarding Elijah or Tucker, so maybe who knows with how Twitter's going, how the who knows. But in regards to this one, I'm going with the Jets. Obviously, you mentioned Mike White, not a great performance in his previous start, but I feel like, especially in regards to what happened in New England, and if you remember Mike White's first start, at least with the Jets, the Cincinnati game, they found a bunch of different ways to throw the ball short, which they don't do with Zach Wilson. And especially since, like I said, not a great performance last week, and at home too, I just think that they'll find ways to make the offense work, make Mike White look good, make this offense go at least. And I'm still just not confident in Chicago's defense as a whole to make enough plays to slow down the Jets. Jets still have some solid playmakers on the outside, and Michael Carter, James Robinson still solid as well. So, and then mainly to the defense, I think they'll be all over the run game, especially if Justin Fields is hurt. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to limit his how many design quarterback runs he has, which we know has been a big reason why this offense has been lifting off. And, he may be trying to protect that shoulder too. It's a very interesting decision on what they'll do in regards to him. And especially if he doesn't play, I just don't think there's much of a chance, as we haven't seen much out of this Bears offense when his running wasn't involved. You remember the first few weeks, passing offense was not great. And I forget, I know they still have Nick Foles. I'm trying to remember who their backup is.
I'm pretty sure it's Trevor Siemian. Nick Foles in Indianapolis.
Trevor Siemian. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Trevor Siemian's, and we've seen Trevor Siemian. So, I think, we saw the Jets defense putting up some great performances. I think they put up another one here. And I think the offense will do enough to cover. And, so we'll see what the Bears do with Justin Fields if he's healthy enough to play. Hopefully, I don't know technically the right decision. We're not in that building, but hopefully they do. Because I don't know. I think they should just rest him, even if it's in question. But we'll see.
Also, it was George Font, the right tackle, is who's coming back from injury. So not Elijah Vera Tucker. I think he's actually already been healthy. So I was confused him with George Font.
Gotcha. So may have a tackle back, which may help. So we'll probably will actually in regards to their case. All right. So first disagreement of this podcast, but second one of the week for us. Now we go to definitely a game that no one outside these two cities will probably be watching, unless you are a fan of them, and that is the Denver Broncos. They were favored by 2.5 going to Carolina. This will probably be a defensive showdown. I'm interested to see what the over-under is, because I probably would hammer the under. But anyways, John, between these two struggling teams, who do you think covers the spread here between them?
Crazy week because we have another new quarterback, Carolina starting Sam Darnold. I'm going with the Panthers against the spread. I don't have faith in really either of these teams right now, and the usual that I do with that is I just take the underdog and the points because I don't know how this game's going to go. I do think that Denver should, on paper, be the better team, but there's been a lot of times that I've thought that, and they couldn't show up. So I'm off the Denver train as of right now, and of course this is going to be the week that they actually have a decent game. But I'm off the Denver train as of right now because although I do think this is going to be such an incredibly low scoring game, I don't think that Denver is going to be able to do enough to separate in terms of the spread. So I'm taking the Panthers.
All right, so another disagreement. I'm going with Denver. Even with Sam Darnold being thrown in first game in a little bit over a year, and you're playing the Denver defense, I don't feel that great things are going to happen for him. And on the flip side, they didn't win last week, but we saw a little bit of a better performance from the Denver offense, especially passing wise. And I'm just kind of banking on the fact that maybe that they can carry that success on here. Granted, Carolina's got a much better, much more talented defense than the Raiders. So that's an important factor to note. But it's tough. I know this would be a no question type of answer, and I don't mean to compare quarterbacks, but I just barely trust. I trust Russell Wilson more than Sam Darnold, but obviously, knowing everything we know this season, that's not as obvious of a statement as in past times. But I just fear Darnold and
crazy,
that line
by the way.
Have a tough
like
day.
That's any other point outside of this year. Anyone said that would have been blasphemous.
Yes, but we are at that point. It's a weird year. So I think Denver does enough to cover. John believes Carolina will either keep it close or maybe win. So we'll see who prevails there. Now we go over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are favored by 3.5 going to Cleveland last week of Deshaun Watson's suspension. So after this week, they'll be back. But one more week of Jacoby Brissett at least, John. Do you think he gets a win here and can pull this one out, or do you think Tampa takes care of business?
I'm rocking with Tampa in this one. Last week, Cleveland's run game was pretty much shut down by Buffalo. Tampa's still a great run defense, not as elite as they used to be, but still a very, very, very good run defense. And so I think they're going to show up in this one. I don't know if they can shut down Nick Chubb as well as Buffalo did last week, because I think they held him like 18 yards. Like, that's just kind of unrealistic to expect out of Nick Chubb, because he's still an amazing running back. But I do think that they can have some success stopping him, force Jacoby Brissett to beat them. And also, I don't know. With Cleveland, it just seems like Jacoby Brissett, like, he has moments, but for the most part, I don't know. There's just something wrong with Cleveland as of right now that I don't think even Deshaun Watson can really fix. Like, I think the season's kind of done. I know that a lot of people are just kind of focusing on the quarterback because it is Jacoby Brissett, but like, the front seven has been pretty poor, which is surprising because it felt like with Myles Garrett in that defensive line, a few key additions. They have Jadeveon Clowney still. You add Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker, like they would sort of figure it out. But man, that interior of that defensive line, they just can't fix it. They're getting bullied. And I think that although Tampa hasn't been the best of run games, Rachaad White had a pretty good game last week or 2 weeks ago against Seattle before the bye. Now they're coming off a bye week where they got to prepare for this game extra long. And Leonard Fournette, assuming he plays, because Todd Bowles did say he's pretty sore after banging up his hip, I believe. He might not play, but if he does play, then you got that 1-2 combo. I don't know. I just don't think that Cleveland's going to have the ability to slow down Tampa's run game, despite how poor Tampa's been on the whole year. And I don't think Cleveland on the other side is going to be able to run that effectively. So I'm taking Tampa.
Yeah, I'm also going with Tampa. Just to preface, we kind of already mentioned Tampa Bay's defense, I think, poses a lot of issues for Cleveland and their offense, and especially in potential inclement weather. Who knows how effective Amari Cooper can be? And I don't mean to be mean, but it is a real statistic or a split difference, him indoors and outdoors. And regardless, he's going to move up against Carlton Davis, pretty good corner there, and a pretty good Tampa defense overall, like John mentioned. So, especially they're going to be able to slow down the run game. I don't think that Cleveland will have much success in the pass game. Very simplistic pass offense. And on the flip side, like you already mentioned, this Cleveland front seven, it's mainly predicated on speed, really outside of Myles Garrett. He's the only real guy that kind of lives up to his size. And as we've seen in previous weeks, like you mentioned, even Buffalo ran on them with their combination of backs. So yeah, I expect Tampa Bay to be able to do so, and Tom Brady to be able to make enough throws, to win the game and obviously cover the spread. So we are both going Tampa there to win and cover against Cleveland. Now we head over to Washington, where the Commanders are at home. They've been kind of on a hot streak here. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Atlanta Falcons. No Kyle Pitts for the Falcons going forward. So, John, do you think that the Falcons can still stay relevant, or does Washington continue their hot streak here?
Well, the Atlanta Falcons are not the covered kings. Actually, I don't know if they're still the covered kings or not, but they have dropped a few games the last couple weeks. Like, I think they're 2-2 in the last 4 weeks in terms of covering. But I think they're going to cover in this one. I know that they don't have Kyle Pitts, but honestly, I don't know if that really hurts them because they weren't really using him that much anyway. And so I'm taking Atlanta here. I do think that Washington has been solid, but a lot of these games that they've been playing well in and covering in, they've been the underdog outside of like the Houston game, but that's Houston. In this one, in what I expect to be a low-scoring affair, both teams running the ball pretty heavily. I just think that it's a field goal type of game, so I'm taking the underdog with the Falcons, and honestly, wouldn't be shocked if they were to win.
Sorry, I made a weird eye because I was pulling up the ESPN like things, just look at the injuries. And their headline is Falcons Commanders meet in matchup of mobile quarterbacks. Look, I don't know Taylor Heineke can run, but I don't classify him as a mobile quarterback, so I think that's a little bit of a stretch there. Just saying. Anyways, I'm going with the Commanders. I think their defense has kind of turned a corner here recently. Who knows if they'll get Chase Young back this week, but I think that regardless of two Alabama guys in the middle, as we've seen, especially last week and in recent weeks, you're not going to be able pretty much to run the ball on them for most offenses. And as we've seen, Atlanta, make them one-dimensional. Make Mariota start dropping back and patting the ball and throwing the ball. He's going to make bad decisions and bad throws, and especially with no Kyle Pitts. So really, only guy you really have to worry about as the main threat is going to be Drake London. I think the Commanders will be on top of that. And on the flip side, they've kind of found a flow in the run game as of recently too on their end with their two running backs, Robinson and Gibson. And obviously Taylor Heineke's been good enough as he's been named the starter over a healthy Wentz now. He's made enough plays in the passing game to win the job and to keep this offense relevant. So I think that's what they'll do. And man, it's just interesting how like last year, I don't know if you remember last year, this is what I expected pretty much out of the Commanders. And then I don't know, I guess getting Curtis Samuel back, I don't know if that was a really difference, but all of a sudden this year they're starting to figure it out. So credit to them and Ron Rivera, and we'll see if they can keep that hot streak going. As another difference for us. I'm going with Washington to win and cover. John's going with Atlanta to at least cover. So now we head over to a rematch from last year's wild card game. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are favored by 1.5 going to the Tennessee Titans. I'm not sure. Jamar Chase has been confirmed back, but
Joe Burrow
could be
said
back.
He expects him to play. Now that's obviously not the team saying that. Joe Burrow saying that, but something.
But him and Joe Burrow are pretty two peas in the pod. It seems like, at least. So maybe he could be. He could be leaking stuff out there. But Joe Mixon, who knows his status too. So a bunch of some key guys could be out here. But who do you have in this rematch, John?
I am going with the Tennessee Titans to cover. They are the underdogs. I know that Jamar Chase potentially coming back could be a pretty big game changer, but the Titans are at home. Derrick Henry's still cranking. I think the Bengals' run defense is decent. Like, they've had some good showings, but I don't think they've played a run game recently that's as good as the Titans outside of the Browns, and the Browns pretty much did whatever they wanted. Nick Chubb had 100 yards rushing. Kareem Hunt had another 40. Dearness Johnson adds another 17. So like they had over 150 rushing yards. Even Najee Harris last week was able to have some success, having one of his better games of the entire year with 90 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. So I just think that we've seen against, a good rushing team like the Browns, but then some other factor rushing teams like the Panthers or the Steelers who just haven't been very good at running the ball this year. They still had success, and I think that that's going to be the same thing here against one of the best running teams in the whole league. So I'm taking Tennessee to cover. Honestly, I think they can win this one. Very well coached team, very good defense. And if Joe Mixon's kind of up in the air, that's even tougher because then I don't think their run game is going to be that existent, especially considering their offensive line. It's still just like, I don't know if you saw the clip of Leo Collins last week, but there was a play, and it is TJ Watt. So like, I'll cut him some slack here because TJ Watt's very fast, but ball gets snapped. TJ Watt beats him off the line, and instead of like trying to recover and block him, he just kind of like threw his body onto the ground to try and like create a some sort of barrier to like slow him down, like a speed bump almost, I guess, to slow him down a little bit. And plays like that, you're like, you see that and you're just like, man, that's terrible. And so Jeffrey Simmons and all those guys, I think they can have success here. So, and don't forget, the last time they played, I'm pretty sure the Titans stacked them 9 times, and it was a playoff game. So yeah, I'm going with the Titans here.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm going with the Titans also. Very good Titans defense, like you mentioned. I think, though, we've mentioned, too, Cincinnati's passing offense hasn't kind of built off the success of last year. And I'm sure the Titans will be all over their concepts, even if Jamar Chase is back. And they're more of a zone team, too. So I don't foresee Jamar burning them and T Higgins getting a lot of true one-on-one opportunities. And, yeah, you mentioned the O-line being a question mark, and yeah, Tennessee's defensive line's pretty good and run stopping and pass rushing, so that will be an issue. And yeah, I don't expect Ryan Tannehill to throw 3 interceptions, and especially 2 of them being really brutal. And 2 last time also didn't have a fully healthy Derrick Henry in the playoffs last time for Tennessee. So although they had AJ Brown, I think it kind of bounces out a little bit. We've seen Treylon Burks. He had a solid game against Green Bay, and so Robert Woods seems to be coming along. So they're making the pass game work, via committee, and I expect that Tennessee's to do typical Tennessee things, like you mentioned, just score enough points, don't turn over the ball, and their defense will, be suffocating and not let the Bengals really get into a flow of rhythm. So we both go Tennessee, the surprising home underdog, especially given their recent success, but there's not a very sexy team, maybe. Anyhow, now we go over to the West Coast to Seattle, where the Seahawks are at home. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders have been kind of up and down pretty much the whole season. Are you trusting them, John, or are you going with the Seahawks?
I'm going to go with the Raiders here. I like Seattle. I think they're also coming off a bye, I believe. But for the Raiders, I don't know. I just think that they have some routes to success here. We've seen Devontae Adams against some really good corners this year. Even last week against Patrick Surtain, who I love. I was really high on him prior to the draft. He's been amazing this year. He cooked them quite a few times in that game, including for the game-winning touchdown in overtime. So I think Tariq Woolen could have his work cut out for him a little bit here. Also, I don't know. The Raiders are just in a very desperate situation in which there's not really much to lose. And we've seen in some of their games, they can get the big leads and then they just kind of choke and let it go. I don't know. I have this gut feeling that they can get a big lead in this one and maybe they can hold on to it. Maybe they can figure it out, because I do think that Josh McDaniels is a better coach than people are kind of giving him credit for right now. So I don't know. I'm taking the Raiders here in this one. Luckily they're the underdog. If they were the favorite, then I probably wouldn't, but they're the underdog here. And I don't know, just kind of a gut feeling call.
All right. Well, I'm going with Seattle here, especially off the bye. We mentioned before, not many difference makers on that Raider defense, not named Max Crosby. And I think that would be a big issue, especially since, like I said, Seattle's coming off a bye. They'll probably have a few extra tricks, fully healthy, not fully healthy, but, an extra rest for Kenneth Walker and that run game to get going. And we all know Geno's been really good with those receivers. And on the flip side, I mean, this Vegas offense usually is capable of like a couple quarters, usually, first few quarters of really good performances. And then, once they are out of the game plan specific plays, once they have to get to their bread and butter, kind of struggle there. And while Seattle's defense is kind of, middle of the pack, they're not really predictable. So at least I feel from what I've seen. And I think that defense will do enough. Chinna Nwosu's been silently a very solid player for them. Some of the rookies, Tariq Woolen, been really good also, although, like you said, has his work cut out for him. But I don't imagine he'll be in a lot of compromising situations, as Seattle, very zone heavy too. So I think that will limit the Raiders, especially since really Devontae, I imagine, will be the focus, and then they can slow down the run game and Josh Jacobs. So I guess we'll have to see who is correct here, if the Raiders can cover or if Seattle can beat that spread and win at home. Also, another factor why I'm going Seattle is just at Seattle too. It's always a tough place to play, especially since they're not rebuilding this year. So I imagine that place will probably be rocking as per usual. But now, speaking of West Coast teams, going with the LA Chargers, they are favored by 2.5, going to Arizona. Arizona coming off that tough. Both teams coming off tough night losses last week. So, John, do you think who do you think will basically bounce back?
I think the Chargers are going to bounce back here. The Cardinals, they just got a lot of issues. They fired that offensive line coach. Turns out it was because he groped a woman. So there's that going on. Distractions. Their run game has been incredibly inefficient. Who knows if Kyler Murray's going to play? I think he's supposed to, but who knows? I don't know. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on there. Meanwhile, the Chargers are getting more healthy. Mike Williams did not practice today, so I'm kind of expecting him not to play. But Keenan Allen should be good to go, and that'll be a pretty big help for them. So I'm taking the Chargers in this one. Just too much going on for the Cardinals for me to really feel confident about them in any game at this point, especially when matchup-wise, like, okay, the Chargers, their big weakness is the run defense. Well, guess what? The Cardinals are one of the least efficient teams in terms of running the ball in the entire NFL. So it doesn't feel like they can really take advantage of that. So going with the Chargers.
Yeah, that was precisely my thought. Why I went to Chargers. I mean, you can't even expose one of the weaknesses, the only real weakness of their defense. We know their pass defense is pretty good for LA. And on the flip side, Herbert really good against the blitz. And even if he doesn't have Mike Williams, so has Keenan Allen, like you mentioned. And Jordan Palmer has been really good. Or not Jordan, Josh Palmer. I'm sorry. If I mix that up. But he's been really good for them lately, and obviously Eckler's still really talented as well. Maybe they get Gerald Everett back too. I remember he was supposed to he was questionable going into last Sunday, so maybe they get him back, just another weapon, like John mentioned. So yeah, I think LA handles this one, and Arizona's going to be faced with more tough questions going forward. And yeah, as you mentioned, all that off the field stuff, and that's even if Kyler plays, if Colt McCoy plays too, especially and they lose every bit of dynamic part of their offense in regards to Kyler running the ball to himself. So, excuse me. So that was that. Both going to the LA Chargers to win and cover. Now we go to San Francisco, where the 49ers are at home. They are favored by 8.5, hosting the New Orleans Saints. Saints off that great performance from Andy Dalton. Obviously, Niners just finished that steamrolling on Monday night. So someone's got to give here, John. Who are you going with between these two?
Going with the Niners. I know Andy Dalton had a good performance last week, but they still only beat the Rams by a touchdown. And the Rams, it's not looking good for them. And that includes part of the game where the Rams had a backup quarterback, like Matt Stafford wasn't even out there, no Cooper Kupp. I don't know. I think that the Rams they're in a situation where if you're barely beating them, I don't have a lot of confidence in you, especially against one of the best teams in the entire NFL, the Niners. I know their record isn't, at the elite level, but they had a few different things to start the year, and it seems like they're finally getting healthy. There's stability. They're figuring stuff out. They're hitting their stride. So yeah, I'm going with the Niners here to keep rolling in San Francisco.
I'll go with the Niners also. We've seen the Saints defense, especially the run defense, the front four, not be as great as they have been in previous years. And like you mentioned too, on the other side, this offense kind of been, hit or miss on some weeks, depending on really sometimes their opponent. And this is a really good Niners defense, as we've mentioned before. And I just think the real Andy Dalton will probably come back to earth this week, given the pressure he's going to face, pass rush wise, and the different playmakers they have on the back end in regards to San Fran. And just to go back to the San Francisco offense, like we saw Monday night, it's just tough to defend them at this point. It's who do you take away? You want to take him McCaffrey? They can hit you with the Debo in the short to intermediate game. Same with Kittle. And you try to take one of those guys away, then the run game gets going with Kyle Shanahan. And they also have Brandon Ayuk too, as a little sprinkle on top, and he's pretty solid as well, along with some of the other receivers that they find ways to get them involved. So I'm going with San Fran to cover that big spread also with John. So we'll see if they can do that for us. And now we go to Kansas City, where the Chiefs are at home, favored by 10.5, hosting the aforementioned Rams. No Matthew Stafford this week. Looks like, I think his name was Bryce Perkins, if I'm correct, is going to be the starter for the LA Rams. So yeah, a little bit disappointing if you bought tickets for this ahead of time, like 8 months ago. You're probably thinking it was going to be a much better game, but this is what we got. So John, basically, do you think the Chiefs cover, or do you think that they won't be able to?
I'm going with Kansas City. We just saw Andy Dalton was able to have a good performance against this Rams team. I can't imagine the Chiefs don't come out hot in this one. The Rams, they just got a lot of issues going on, like I already talked about, and I'm not trusting it. Even if it's a big spread, I just can't bring myself to trust it because Kansas City, arguably the best team in the NFL right now. They're looking amazing. Patrick Mahomes is currently the favorite for the MVP, and the Rams they got a lot of issues. So, especially with a backup quarterback, going with Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm going Kansas City also. You missed a backup quarterback. Yeah, I mean, this Kansas City defense has been pretty solid. And this Rams offense has not been very good. And that was with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp for most of the year. No Kupp, no Stafford. Yeah, and they haven't really been able to get the run game going. And they released Darrell Henderson too this week. And they're leaning on Cam Akers, who was also in the doghouse earlier in the year. Yeah, their offense is a little bit of a weird. The whole team seems to be just in a bit of a rough patch, to say the least. And I expect Kansas City to take advantage of that and win and obviously cover. So I'm going Kansas City with John as well. And that leads us to the Sunday night game, and that is going to be held at Philadelphia. They are favored by 6.5. We're in their blackout night jerseys and such, hosting my Green Bay Packers. Who, as we all know, lost previously Thursday, so they're coming off a mini bye. John, do you think Philly can pull this one out and cover, or do you think Green Bay keeps it close and or pulls off the upset?
I think there is a route for Green Bay to pull off the upset. I'm not saying they're going to, but there is a very clear way that I can see it happening, and that is success in the ground game. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And when that happens, the Eagles are going to have to commit more resources to stopping the run, and that's where Aaron Rodgers can thrive with a deep ball over the top to Christian Watson, some big plays. I'm going to go with Green Bay here. I feel like Philly just has not impressed me the last 3 or so games in terms of offense. I think that Green Bay's defense, despite some of the issues that they've been having, is still pretty decent, and I don't think that Philly has been running the ball well enough that they're going to come out here and just dominate on the ground. So, like I said, I think the more realistic scenario is the Eagles win, but I think there's a route for Green Bay to cover, and I'm taking it.
I'm not taking any chances. I'm going with Philly. I know run defense has been, potentially a bugaboo for them, but we got to kind of be balanced on both sides. And I don't think Green Bay's passing offense is complex enough. And I think, probably see a lot of Darius Slay on whoever's outside, whether it be Watson and or Lazard. And there's still Bradbury, who's pretty solid. Especially once Green Bay starts, if the defense can't hold off that Philadelphia offense and the Philadelphia gets a lead, then Green Bay definitely becomes one-dimensional and it just makes things easier for that Philly defense. And, Rodgers, he already came out today and said, he's playing with a broken thumb. And we've seen whether it's a thumb or just him, he just hasn't been up to this Aaron Rodgers standard that we've seen in previous years. So in a game where we're definitely the lesser talented team, and in previous years I might have, gone with Green Bay to at least cover Rodgers to keep us close, but I just don't think we're in that, maybe in that stage anymore. Definitely not in that moment right now. So I think Philly takes care of business, especially after recent weeks. Everyone kind of calling them frauds. They lost to Washington a couple weeks ago, close game to the Colts, who are low key a solid team, but everyone kind of ragged on them a little bit. I think that they'll bounce back, and especially on Sunday night at home, put a whooping on my Packers. That's what I'm expecting. So I'm going Philly. John going Green Bay. Now we head to the last but not least game. It is the Monday Nighter. It is going to be at Indianapolis. Jeff Saturday's first main prime time game, I think. And they're favored by 2.5, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not the sexiest matchup here, John. But who do you got between these two?
I'm going to go with the Steelers here. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, run-heavy game. I don't know. I've started to like what I'm seeing out of Kenny Pickett recently. Him and George Pickens have been connecting for some big plays. Him and Pat Freiermuth have been developing some chemistry, and I mentioned this in our last episode, but Najee Harris has started to, quietly put some good games together. So I'm going to go with Pittsburgh here. I don't know. I kind of one of those gut feelings that I think this is going to be a close one, and I don't know. I'm riding with Mike Tomlin on this one.
Yeah, it's a tough one to pick. I'll go with Indy though. I think the Lions, they've had a better emphasis in regards to running the ball as of recently, which has helped Matt Ryan, and even their passing attack a bit more, quick throws or just quick decisions, so that Matt Ryan's not standing there patting the ball and then getting killed. And another big point too is Indianapolis defense. We've talked about Denver's defense kind of being the saving grace for them, keeping them in games, but Indy's defense has done the same too. I mean, they held very high flying Philly offense. That struggled for most of the game. They were able to do that to them. And Pittsburgh, I'm still not fully sold on their offensive success recently. I do believe in the pieces. I just don't believe in the whole puzzle altogether right now. And especially against a pretty good front four in Indy, I think that they'll be able to slow down the run game pretty much on their own and then make life tough for Kenny Pickett and put them in compromising situations, them being Pittsburgh in compromising situations. So, and I think Matt Ryan will just take care of the ball. We've seen him and Paris Campbell have a little bit of a connection here too. And especially with no Minka, there may be some opportunities in the secondary for him and for Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman to take advantage. So I'm going Indianapolis. I just think they have a few more, as much as I hate to say it because they haven't really been this way, a few more known commodities at this point. I know more of what I'm going to get from them, but the TJ Watt factor scares me because it could be where they're a game where he has like 2 or 3 huge sacks and, especially one was like a forced fumble or something. And then Pittsburgh wins. And like you already mentioned, like the ugly 13-10 because TJ Watt, came up with a huge strip sack at like 10-10 to put him in field goal position. Something weird like that, That's typical Pittsburgh fashion, but I'll stick with the home team for now. So, those are our picks. We got a lot of differences in regards to just the Sunday/Monday game. There's 5. Wait, 1, 2, 6. I miscount 6, 7 for the whole week. We got one on Thanksgiving. So, John, I think I went first last week, so you can go first this week.
I thought I went first last week. Did
you go first? I'm trying to think.
I think I did.
Let me see. I gotta do this. Okay, so when do we start locked? We talked week 6, 7? Let's see,
started week 6.
Week 6, and I went first, so I should be even weeks. Oh, and you should be odd weeks.
Yeah, so it's week 12. So it's
12. You. Okay, all right, you're right. Damn. I'm going with Tampa as my first lock.
Okay.
I just don't believe in Cleveland. I think it's a really bad matchup.
I'm going to lock the Chargers.
That's a good one. All right. I want to lock the Dolphins, but it's a big spread. I'm scared.
It is big.
I'm going to go with Philly as my other one. I'm pretty confident in that, unfortunately. All right. What about you? That'll probably be my last, by the way.
I will lock. I'm going to take the Dolphins.
You can take them. Yeah. Chiefs are interesting too, but who knows? Maybe they struggle a little bit and, Aaron Dahl maybe, stalls some drives for them. That's what scares me about that.
Right.
And same with New Orleans. I mean, could be the bad Jimmy Garoppolo could come out, put them behind the 8 ball, and it'd be a closer game. I thought about Tennessee too, but who knows? Maybe Jamar Chase and Burrow make a few plays, and then, so that's what's scary about that. That's why
I'm taking another one. I'm also going to lock Chicago against the Jets.
Okay.
But that is where I'm stopping. I will take 3 because I don't think I've had a single week where I've gotten my locks, and so.
Well, I think we've only had one altogether, right?
Maybe next year we got to change the way that we do it, but I'm trying to catch up in one swoop. Get all 3 and hope that you don't get either of them.
Yeah. So, all right. So I got Tampa Bay. They have to cover the 3.5 point spread against Cleveland, and I also have Philly at home. They are favored. They have to cover the 6.5 point spread against Green Bay. And then John has Miami, who's favored by 9.5 against Houston. John has Chicago, who is the underdog by 3.5 against the Jets. So they have to lose by 3 or less, or if they win by any amount, or even if they tie, John gets the win there. And then you also have the Chargers. John has the Chargers winning by basically 3 or more, since they are favored by 2.5. So we will see who, if we can, one of us can actually get our locks again. We'll see about that. And then obviously we'll see if John can make some ground, or if I can build up a lead again with our 7 differences. But as per usual, as mentioned before, you can check out our YouTube, which is Shut Up and Ball. If you can like, comment, subscribe there. Thanksgiving picks are up there. These will be up there. So our, every week our reactions are up there. So you can please feel free to give some support there. We have our podcast on all podcast mediums, which is, once again, Shut Up and Ball. Please leave a rate and such, rate, comment, or wherever heck you can rate there. And then we are on Instagram at Shut Up and Ball Pod there, and Twitter and TikTok at Shut Up and Ball. Other than that, hope everyone enjoys their Thanksgiving/Black Friday weekend. Hope you all, get some savings. I got some things I'm looking at to capitalize on Black Friday. Don't get any fights, though, if you're actually going out in person. Stay safe out there. But otherwise, enjoy your weekend, and we will see you all next week.